Welcome to the Fabric Podcast, where we explore company culture and how it scales as a company grows. Brought to you by the team at The Receptionist, a bootstrapped, Denver-based software company. Each episode of Fabric will set out to uncover unique and uncommon answers to the question, how do companies of any size create a culture and core values that employees actually live out? On this episode of the podcast, we're updating you on some big moves. Actual geographical moves. For a company who values our culture, this was a shift. And we have Andee Thompson, Senior Inside Sales Representative, and Sam Penrod, Account Executive, on the show to talk to us about the permanent moves they made in 2021. They talk about the personal reasons that prompted these moves and how the transition has been going for them. Since we were working as a fully remote team due to the pandemic, the transition has been a smooth and positive one. But they do share about the logistical considerations and some of the challenges that you can experience when being fully remote team members of a semi-remote team. Enjoy the episode. Well, I'm really excited about this episode of the podcast because we have some guests that we haven't seen in a very long time. So Andee, welcome back.
Thank you.
And for anyone who is listening, this is Andee with two E's, not Andy with a Y, our CEO. And we also have Sam. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us, Sarah. Glad to be back.
Absolutely. So since it has been a while since we've had you on, let's have you remind us about your role and tell us where you're living now, because that's what we're focusing on today. So Andee, remind us a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the sales team and I am in Senior Inside Sales Representative, and I'm currently living in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
All right. And Sam, what about you?
Yeah, so I am an account executive also on the sales team with Andee here. And I'm living in Tampa, Florida, the St. Pete area to be exact.
Nice. Now, we have always been a semi-remote team, but you two are now fully remote. So tell us a little bit about what that means, Andee, and kind of what that typically looks like for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started at The Receptionist, it was told that we would be, in the office 1 week and out of the office the next week. And the reason why we do that is because Andee, our CEO, lives in Santa Fe. And what that originally looked like is the team would come in Monday through Thursday 1 week, generally not coming into the office on Fridays. And then the following week, everyone would come in, including Andee, so we could all spend some time together.
Right. And at that time, really, Andee was the only one who lived somewhere other than the Denver area, right?
Yes. When I started, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's changed a little bit, going from sort of semi-remote. As we all know, we had a pandemic hit. Unfortunately, we're still working our way through that. And so then everyone went remote, which we were sort of prepared for, I think, because we were semi-remote. But was there a bigger company conversation about people being able to stay fully remote, maybe relocate as the pandemic evolved, or did this come up in another way, Sam?
So it's an interesting thing, right? Because I think with the pandemic, it caused a lot of introspection, being that you're at home and isolated a lot of the time. So I think it helped us turn a focus on family and that work-life balance, and just remembering that part of our culture. And before Andee, A2 here with me, started, Ryan worked here, and he actually was the first one to go remote in San Francisco. And so, it was something that we had tested out before, but he was really the only one to go. And then once the pandemic happened, I was having a little bit of a hard time in Denver, and I ended up losing my dad in December. And so that's when I reached out to Tom and Andee, A1 is what we call him, and brought up that I want to move home, but it's, one of the most important things to me is staying with The Receptionist, because I love it here and very blessed. So that's kind of what brought up the conversation, at least from my end.
Got it. So you were trailblazing and kind of were really bold and asked if there would be an option to continue to stay with a company that you love and also move home. And then Andee, what about you? How did that come up for you?
Well, for me, my partner, Grant, his father is sick, and he actually has lung cancer. So we were doing a lot of traveling back and forth between Denver and Tulsa to try to, make sure to spend as much time with him as we could. And then after talking to Grant and then talking to Tom, it just seemed to make the most sense for us to come back to Oklahoma for a little while, at least, to be able to spend more time with Grant's dad and his family. So that's what brought me back here.
Yeah. So unfortunately, sad circumstances for both of you. But, Sam, as you said, I think this year has really allowed or forced all of us to really be introspective and consider what is most important. And while everyone loves the receptionist, we also really love our families. And it's nice that you've both been able to sort of get closer back to them and balance that work and life a bit differently. So before we kind of jump into my next set of questions, I'm just curious, how is it going from your perspective, kind of having made this shift?
I can go. Yeah, I mean, so because we worked remote for, let's say a year before transitioning to Florida, back to Florida, I'd already had pretty much gotten the remote life down. But, it's really amazing because now I'm where I grew up with, I bought a home. I have my dog here with me, and I love my neighborhood. I have all my best friends. So that part of it is really fantastic. And touching on what you said a few minutes ago, Andee Alsop, our CEO, and Tom and our leadership team have done a really good job at creating a safe enough space for us to feel comfortable and confident in allowing us to move. So I think it's gone really well. And speaking for myself, like I'm a self-starter. They treat us so well here at the receptionist that there's no, like, I'm going to work just as hard for them as I feel like work for us. So I think it's gone really well. And yeah, I couldn't be more happier about the situation.
Okay. And Andee, what about you? How's it been going so far?
It's been going very, very well. I was nervous to leave because I felt like there might be a chance that I might feel a little disconnected, and just not plugged into the rest of the team. But I haven't felt like that at all. Andee and Tom on the leadership team, they've been incredibly supportive. And it's been really nice to be back here. I'm actually in the process of buying a home myself. We close on the 30th, so that's exciting news. But it's nice just to have the balance and know that as long as I have my laptop and as long as I have a good internet connection, I'm able to do my work and stay connected. And we're really great communicators at the receptionist too. So I don't think I could have asked for it to go any better, really, than the way it's going. I'm really grateful.
Yeah. And Sam, you made the good point that we were already remote. And so it wasn't really much of a transition. Yes, a big move is, of course, a transition, but moving away from, the team, you all, unfortunately, we'd already done that. So it's really interesting that, it's sort of good timing, right, to make this shift. But the other part of it is we do love working as a team. And I think everyone was looking forward to, at some point, getting back to that week on, week off and seeing each other and kind of getting into the groove. And our culture is really important. And I love that, you said that sort of this family is also part of our culture, but being together and working as a team. So, we've tried to think about how can we maintain that strong culture out of the office, and we've done a great job. But again, the thought was that we would all eventually return. So I'm curious about sort of any thoughts or feelings about relocating related specifically to company culture. You each have kind of touched on that already, but now that this is sort of a permanent move for you, how you're feeling about company culture and what that means for being a fully remote worker. Andee, what about you?
So, I mean, we're really lucky at the receptionist that, we take company culture so seriously. But one thing that I feel like is really important and has helped me stay connected with the company culture is just being really mindful to make sure that I don't want to say over communicating, but maybe that it is actually the right word, to make sure we're staying in touch with everyone on the team as much as you can via Slack. And then one thing that has helped me as well is if I ever feel like, I am missing that little bit of a connection with a person or with someone on the team, everyone's so willing to just hop on a quick phone call or even hop on a quick Zoom, so we can see each other's faces and hear each other's voices. And that really, I don't know, that really does help, because you don't feel like you're so far separated from everyone else.
Yeah, Sam, what about you when it comes to company culture? Kind of what are your thoughts now knowing that you are permanently relocated?
I think the word that comes to mind is supported. I think I have grown to create good boundaries for myself and for others. And I think that happens with transparency. So like Andee just mentioned, like communication, the receptionist has given us a co-working space stipend. So we can go out and, at least a couple of days a week can get out and actually be in our own community, spreading the word about the receptionist, making friends in our community. So that's helped for sure to spread my wings a little bit. And then also I just went back to Denver to visit, as well as Andee did. And at the end of July, I went, and coming back and seeing everyone, how excited it was. Like I had such a great time that it made those moments together even more special. I will say that last week I missed out on the baseball game. I was at my best friend's wedding, so I missed it. Otherwise I would have been there. So I did have a little bit of FOMO for sure, but I think that's just kind of like, the ebbs and flows or pros and cons of making a decision to move home. So overall, I feel supported.
Absolutely. And, we should say too that both of you have plans to come back at least quarterly to not, I shouldn't just say visit, but to work from here and to visit with the other members of the team. So that's been an important piece, I think, of that transition for everybody, is that you're not completely gone. You will be back and joining in. But yeah, it is a bummer when you miss out on some of those really fun kind of activities and events that we do. So you talked about having kind of that stipend to have a co-working space and coming back probably at least quarterly. Are there any other sort of practical or logistical pieces that you have set up so that this is successful, as well as maybe things you need to consider, like now that you're in different time zones from the majority of the company?
One of the logistical things to consider is the different time zones that we're in. Especially Sam being in Eastern time, it's 2 hours later for her than everyone else that's working in Mountain, and me being 1 hour ahead as well. So I bet but just with the flexibility and how supportive everyone is, it's not been a huge transition, I don't think. Generally our support hours, or when we're generally available, is 7:30 to 6 Mountain time. And so sometimes we might get on a little earlier in the day than everyone else and may leave a little earlier. But really, as far as logistical things, that's the only thing that really sticks out to me.
Sam, anything else for you logistically or even practically that came up as you made this transition?
Yeah, I think there's some some good things that happened, right? Because I am on East Coast time. It's a secret, but sometimes I'm online a couple hours before everyone. So if there are East Coast customers that come through our chat or sales leads, if I'm online, I can jump in and just say, hey, and help them a bit earlier. And then, my team's done a really good job. Like, I think that's what I was actually nervous about, is feeling okay logging off early, even though it's not early for me, but, it's like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, Mountain time. So everybody's still working. So that was actually probably the biggest adjustment for me, just like being okay, saying goodbye a little bit early, not feeling guilty about it. But yeah, I think that as far as logistically that goes, it's been really smooth. And I think we have a really good thing going as far as like our team goes. Everyone on the receptionist, on the sales team and amongst our whole team cares a lot about teamwork and kind of jumping in. So, like if a chat for me comes in on, through our chat system of like a free trial I'm working, or a demo that I had with a potential customer, like Andee A2 here will jump in and, help and gladly cover for me. And I would do the same for her. So I think that's definitely helped make it a bit easier for us.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely see from the sales perspective, having people in different time zones can actually be a real positive. But like you said, it can also feel a little weird. You did start your day earlier than everyone else, but you're ending and everyone is still working. Now that you're away, we kind of touched on this a little bit and some of that FOMO, but what do you think you're going to miss most now that you are fully remote team members? I know you'll be coming back from time to time, but you are fully remote. So Andee, what do you think you'll miss most?
I mean, it is nice just to be able to pop into the office whenever you feel like it. I think one of the things I miss most is, not only just being in the office whenever I'd like to, but even like Sam mentioned, like if people are going out to company lunch, like I get a little bummed that I'm not going to be able to go and hang out with everybody. I mean, we are really lucky that we can come back quarterly and then we can make the time that we are in the office really count. But I miss just the organic time of just us being in the office and just like chatting a little bit about things outside of work and just making those connections with, everyone else on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like missing out on the game. I'll be at the receptionist. It'll be 4 years in December. And so like this past weekend when everyone was at the game, I just was, reminiscing on the past year's games and how much fun they were and how much fun the team has when we can all kind of, let our hair down. So yeah, I mean, I'll definitely miss out on those experiences, but I do think it makes the visits even more special and fun. I mean, it's kind of silly, but Hannah or Kaylee in the past have brought in like donuts. So I'll just like miss sitting on the couch eating a donut while we all have our computers on our laps working away and just chit-chatting. I also really appreciate or think it's important to have like a pulse on the team. And I think that happens very naturally when you're all in the office every so often. You can hear what's going on and what different teams are working on that you might not talk to every day. So I think that's a big part of what I try to continue is maintaining those relationships and asking people how they're doing and how their workload is or things like that, just so, the team in itself remains like healthy and stealthy.
Yeah, I like that. Healthy and stealthy. Well, I feel like you each sort of already answered this last question, but I'll ask it just in case anything else comes up. So for our listeners who might be in this position where much of their company is going to return to work and they're going to stay remote, any thoughts or other tips from a practical or even mental standpoint that might help with this transition? Sam?
Yeah, so I love this question. We are big on mental health. We probably were before the pandemic, but I definitely think through the pandemic and after the pandemic, it's become like a focal point. I mean, for me, for sure. And so I do think, creating boundaries for yourself because you are working from home. And so if you're working from home, like me logging off at 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 my time and not feeling bad about that, like that's a boundary for myself. Or taking breaks to actually like go outside and take a few deep breaths. Just making sure that I'm not completely glued to my computer 24/7, I think is a big one. And then just communicating, being as transparent as possible. So, it just really sets expectations, I think, for myself and for others as we continue to learn and figure out what remote life works or looks like at the receptionist.
Yeah, I love that. Andee, what about you?
I mean, Sam made a lot of really great points. I agree with everything she said. I think one thing for me is making sure, like, it is so nice to be able to get up in the morning, grab a cup of coffee, and sit down and start working. And I've had a bad habit of basically, like, as soon as I wake up, I'm sitting down at my laptop. So making sure to create just like a little bit more space, like even in the morning, so you have some time to kind of like, walk into your day, breathe a little bit, because as much as I love not having a commute, I realized that even that 30-minute drive to work was nice because I got to kind of like think through some things and prepare. Yeah. And like Sam mentioned, making sure to take breaks. It's so easy when you're at home to just stay glued to your laptop throughout the entire workday. And then another thing I think is really important is because, you're communicating so much through Slack or through messaging, assuming positive intent is so important. And I try to also, this sounds kind of silly, but I try to use lots of emojis just to know that, like, make sure my tone is coming across in the way that I'm hoping that it would. And then if I ever feel like there's a miscommunication, just asking someone on my team to hop on a call with me or hop on a Zoom and making sure like we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I love it. I think those are really great tips. And even someone who is making the decision about can a team member stay remote or, go remote, those are great considerations and conversations to have to help set up for a really successful remote relationship as a team member of a company. So thank you both for being here. We obviously miss you and look forward to having you back in the office at some point. So Andee, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Sam, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having us.
We definitely miss Sam and Andee around the office, but we're glad to have them on the show. If you'd like to see a recording of this episode, check it out at thereceptionist.com.